This is Kevin Barnett's Build Stuff.
This is what it looks like. It's a mess, frankly.
Not your typical BS.
I've got plans. Let's go through it right now.
Chipped off the inside of the beat.
I'm Kevin Barnett. Let's BS.
Welcome inside, everybody. Welcome to the garage. I'm the maker in charge, Kevin Barnett. Appreciate you joining us here on Build Stuff. Episode number 1 of this new series, and here's what you can expect from us. We're going to give you a world of makers. We're going to expose you to people who are doing it full-time, people who are doing it part-time, people who are on YouTube, those that are job shops. We're going to show you a world of makers that's out there, folks doing from the everyday to some extremely cool stuff. We're also going to have small projects for you, as well as big project updates on stuff that I'm doing. Big Barn Design is me, and I'm doing some long-term stuff for clients, as well as for myself and for some fun. So, guest on each episode. We'll try and get you a little long form with one of the makers in the world. Today it's Chad Grosklags. He's down in Atlanta, a guy that I met through Workbench Con, an incredible event for YouTubers around the globe who put up DIY content. Met Chad down there in Atlanta in the ATL, and he's a terrific guy, really interesting, into lasers in a big way. He does a lot of laser cup work, taking powder coat off, putting on designs, perhaps putting the spray on, putting on designs, and a really outstanding member of the maker community. So we'll have a few minutes with him. I mentioned we'll have small projects. Our fast project for today is one that I think fits the times. We're going to make your own custom set of wooden dominoes. Something you can use, something you get the kids involved with. If you're like me, you have kids at home, anywhere from 8 to 18 can get involved with this project, make a full set for the family, or make their own set. It's up to you. You can make multiple sets. It's a fairly accessible project. With that in mind, let's get started and take a look at what our supplies are that we need. You're going to have to go to the shop and you're going to have to get some wood. You're going to need maybe poplar, maybe something harder if you have some maple or walnut lying around. Those are two other great woods for doing it. I would stay away from pine. It's a little too soft. Poplar, pay the extra few dollars, and we will cover costs towards the end of this episode. It is a very affordable project. So you're going to need a soldering iron, you're going to need wood, and additional tools. You'll need a saw of some kind. You're going to have to dimension the wood a little bit or get someone to dimension it for you. Use your soldering iron. Sandpaper, router, and file are optional. I do have a router, and so we will be using one here today on Build Stuff. But what you want to do is first dimension your blocks. A standard domino is 1 by 2 inches. Now, most are about 1/4 inch thick. If you're like my wife, who's sort of a linear thinker, she's a math whiz and an accountant, then you think, oh, they're 1/4 inch, they always have to be 1/4 inch. Here's the great thing about when you make stuff. You are the master of that object. Jimmy DeResta is right. This can be whatever thickness you want. This is 3/4, and I like them a little bit thicker so that you can have them stand up. They're much easier to move around, and if some kid comes by and hits the table, they don't fall over and show your hand to your opponent. So, get them dimensioned 1 by 2, then you're going to want to take out your sandpaper. Even just a 180 is fine. Take the corners off. Just break the edges. We'll talk later about dimensioning top or bottom, but for now, just break the edges, take off all the sharpness, and get yourself something that's nice to have in your hand. So that's a pretty easy deal. Do that. You're going to want to stack them up. For a set of 6, pardon me, you're going to want 28 of these pieces, and it can get a little crazy if you want to get bigger. A 9 is 55. If you're familiar with train dominoes, you're talking 91 of these guys. You better have some extra hands in the house. You're going to make your own 91 set of dominoes. That you'll see with the project and the amount of work that it is later. 15 is 136, and I've never even seen 18, which is 190 dominoes. If you do that, please send it to us on Facebook, on Instagram. Make sure we know that you made a set like that. It'd be incredible. So, sand and stack. Get yourself however many you're going to need and get them all put together. That is step number 1. So we've got you on your way on our fast project. Let's take a quick look around the world of makers. It is the Instagram, the week in Insta, stuff that caught my eye this week when I'm scrolling through Instagram because I'm just sitting at home. That's how it is for most of us. So let's take a look at our very first one. It's going to come from Izzy Swan. Now, Izzy, I think he's in North Carolina now. Terrific guy in the maker community, known for his machines he makes out of wood. Really mechanical genius. But he's making a very interesting set of drawers right now. And this is just a bedside table. I believe he's calling it the Cat in the Hat bedside table. Really enjoy this because it takes a lot of different capabilities to put this together. and he's going to have to make a drawer for it as well as a front. This was a few days ago when we were putting the show together. How about today, or this is last night, I think, the update on this? He got out the Fuji spray, and he went ahead and painted this thing a very fanciful color to go with it. So he's looking forward to, I think, adding the drawers and adding the door front to the bottom. But it's going to be pretty interesting. I think we're trying to get it up there on the blue that he's painted on that thing. Our crew working hard at home. There we go. There's a look at it in its more finished form. Izzy, fantastic guy. Go ahead and follow him out there on Twitter. Izzy Swan Woodworking on Instagram. Make sure you check out his Instagram stories too. He always has something very interesting going in the shop. And Izzy, great to see you up on your feet. All right, let's go to our next one. It's Simon Woodworking. This is a gentleman out of New Zealand who's been living in Canada for a while. And he's now living out of a van in Canada, a previously planned trip. And I believe he's stuck, I want to say in Northern California. The gentleman's name is Sean, but he's doing some unreal work with his carving. This is a small scale. So a lot of folks say, hey, I don't have a garage, I don't have a wood shop, I don't have a bigger workspace. All I have is my kitchen table. Sean will help you out. If all you have is your kitchen table, then you need some draw knives, you need some files, and you need some creativity. Sean is putting together some incredible stuff. Here he is in his van. I encourage you to go check out his latest YouTube talking about making in the van. And you're going to find that at Simon Woodworking. That's S-Y-M-A-N Woodworking. So check him out on YouTube. But let's look at some of the things he's been making. I first came to him through someone else in the maker community who was posting his work. He's been doing a lot of Pokemon characters, in addition to some other stuff, but a lot of Pokemon characters out of some exotic woods, some not so exotic woods, and the detail and care he takes with these things are positively fantastic. You get a view of it here. I mean, he's made several Pokemon characters in there, a koala bear, originally from New Zealand, and he's got the pop-up, I forget what the name of that pop-up duck is. I think we have a couple of his projects. That's kind of his overall, and this duck in particular stood out to me. The detail and the finish. Look at how smooth that is, and that thing stands on its own, a thing of beauty. So you don't need a big space if you're going to make some pretty cool stuff. And so be sure and check out Simon Woodworking, and that is Sean, originally out of New Zealand, moved to Canada, I think now trapped in the United States, Northern California. So there's a little geography lesson for him in this situation. All right, next up, Woby Design. Not too far away from here in the garage in Redondo Beach. Woby Design, this is Ben Paik, and he has taken one thing and he's seeing how far he can take it. He says he eventually wants to build an entire house out of skateboards, recycled skateboards. And I think that's a few steps off, but in the meantime, he's been making some terrific progress with what he is making out of recycled skateboards. And these are some art pieces he just put together in the last week. They're all sold out, all three of them. He used epoxy on the top, but using both the laminate on the decks, but also then the graphics on the decks on some of those. Really nice work, and he's working out of a shipping container, a 20-foot long shipping container. So again, he doesn't have a ton of space, but he's maximizing it. Go to Woby Design. You'll find him on Instagram. You can go to his website. You can purchase and patronize him. Very interesting work that he is doing. Ben Paik, one of the good guys out there. Next up, let's take you somewhere else in the world. Let's go on over to Europe. A guy who we're going to hear from actually in today's episode a little bit later in our World of Makers. But let's go on and talk to Emeil Norlander and his Instagram page, a practical engineer. He was doing a light recently. This is a couple of weeks ago. Pretty basic. He's working with a CNC, but also by hand. You can make one piece by hand, and then you can use a router, and you can make multiple pieces to go all the way around your light. This project to me is extremely accessible because it's a pendant light. You can make all the fixtures for it quite simply. The hardware for it, you can pick up at any local hardware store, any big box store. Very accessible project that you can kind of riff off of too. And I, like a lot of other makers, would encourage you to riff off of anything you see here or anything you see with other people. So go ahead and do that. There's your little week in Instagram here on Build Stuff. And we also have, oh, I know one that wasn't in my rundown. We're not off yet. Classic livery. Let's go to that. This is a little bit outside the box, but I like race cars. I love race cars. I love race car paint jobs. I like old ones, new ones, and I take some inspiration from these. So I follow an account called Classic Livery. They will show you some of the all-time greats if you're a fan of racing, some very familiar ones, or just some fantastic looks on a car. A livery is the design graphically of a vehicle, and you'll have sometimes one in a year, or you'll have just one for a year, or you'll have several inside of a year. But you need to check that out and draw some inspiration from other places. We will talk about that in just a little bit. Meantime, let's get to our guest interview. I mentioned Chad Grosklags. Don't call him Grosklags. There is a G in there, but it is silent. Grosklags, down in Atlanta. Mancrafting is his moniker on Instagram, and Mancrafting TM is his website. Doing some fantastic work. Caught up with him earlier this week.
Recorded. All right, you're being recorded. In terms of your background, I know you're a military guy for a long time, and then now you're into making. In between, you have a bug extermination company, or you sell products for bug extermination, which is actually what I was just doing, was paying the bug man.
Ah.
Funny that we're talking to you. But what got you into making? Is this something that you've always done from the time you were younger?
Like every kid, I've always been curious, and I've always pulled stuff apart and tried to put it back together or create something different. I remember one of my earliest memories is I had one of these remote control cars, but it had like a wire that went to the hand control remote,
Right.
and it had one of those little DC motors in it. And I remember saying, well, I'm tired of this car. I want to make a helicopter. And so I completely disassembled it. And I remember taking like a lid from a Folgers coffee can and cutting it so that it made like a propeller, and it didn't really ever work, but I got it to spin like a fan, but it just never had lift. It was probably like most helicopters, not supposed to fly. So
Right.
yeah, those are some of my earliest. My dad was always, he was a programmer for IBM. And so one of the things he loved doing was electronics. And I don't know if you remember Radio Shack, but they used to have all of those like 75-in-1 kits and 50-in-1 kits. And my dad would always get me those for Christmas. And I would go through every single one of those projects probably in 2 days. And then I would be bored with it. It's like, okay, now what? And
So the answer is yes, from a very early age. You are known primarily for lasers and doing a lot of powder coating and those kinds of things right now. For a bunch of people, especially the way you and I contacted, why lasers?
Well, it started when I was customizing Yetis. Basically, I had some employees that were concerned I was going to lose mine. And I said, well, if I lose it, it's going to have my name on it and it's going to have my company name. So I started researching and started off with sandblasting to actually put any kind of logo or design. And at the time, I wasn't Mancrafting. I was just Chad, the Bug Man. And that was my other company. And once I started doing that, people started requesting that I do it for them. And that kind of just out of the blue grew into kind of a small business. At one point, we were doing a lot of customizing in my dining room upstairs with a Cricut vinyl cutter. And my best friend's wife says to me, hey, look at our boys in the other room doing their arts and crafts, because we were using a Cricut vinyl cutter to use as a template for the sandblasting. I was like, hey, we're using a sandblaster. This is manly arts and crafts. not just, your typical Cricut vinyl cutting arts and crafts.
Right,
So,
you were doing a scrapbook.
yeah. So as soon as I said that, then my buddy Andy was like, yeah, we're Mancrafting. And I was like, boom. Ultimately, though, the laser came in when I wanted to be able to do my own cup. And I thought, cutting stuff out on the Cricut, putting it on, powder coating it, peeling it off, it was a very time-intensive process. I was like, if I can just powder coat and then throw it in the laser, that's going to be a lot quicker. It's like one step instead of 5. Then other companies started coming out with powder-coated cups. And I was like, heck, these things are already powder-coated. That's $10 savings for the customer because I don't have to powder coat it. And, if they want something like super special, some color that's not available, or let's say their brand has a very, very, very specific Pantone, then I can still do that. I can order that custom color and still do that for them. It just costs them more.
But right now you've gone from having one laser to 2 to 3, had one go to somebody else. So you have 2 lasers, but you also have a Langmuir Pro now, and you're starting to do some steel cutting.
Should be able to see it right there behind me.
Yeah, why get that piece of machinery?
Actually, my justification was originally when I started powder coating, I had created, I don't have one laying here, but I created a stand so you could flip the cup upside down, powder coat it. You would drop the lip away from the bottom of the cup, the supporting lip, and then you could put it in the oven without having the powder on the stand connect to the powder on the cup. And I did a video on it, and lots of people asked me if I could make them for them. And so I started welding to do that. And then eventually I was buying washers like from Fastenal, and it was really expensive to build this stand the way I was doing it. So I started going to a steel place, and they were plasma cutting the actual pieces for me. I was having to buy an entire sheet, which was like, I want to say it was 180 pieces, and it came out to around $750.
Yeah.
I was like, 2 sheets, and that's paid for. The original one would have been paid for. So
Right.
It made sense to me to invest in it. And when they came out with a new one, it had some upgrades like torch height control, which prevents, like, if you see that cut piece of metal there, as it gets cut, if it's thin enough, it'll start kind of bending or warping. Well, your head will run into those lifted pieces if you don't have torch height control. So I invested in the bigger one, and I'll tell you, I have cut so much in the past week. It's just been a blast.
Oh, that's fantastic. Well, very good. I know we'll check in with you again. We'll do a little longer form interview, but appreciate you joining us here on the first episode of Build Stuff.
All right, man. I appreciate it.
Right
Have a great day.
Good stuff there with Chad, and a couple of things to me stick out. Chad is one of those guys like Will Be Designed, who I mentioned earlier, Ben Paik, who kind of took one thing and started exploring it in a big way. He went really far down the road with lasers. He's explained it for people. He's explored it himself. It's not about being an expert. It's about going on a journey and giving valuable information to people as you go along and you yourself learn. Also, Chad reached out to me last year when I was just a guy in a garage making some stuff, putting up some few things on Instagram. He's an example of the good people that are in this movement from top to bottom. You go from Jimmy DeRest to Bob Claggett all the way down to the lowest person you'll meet in the maker community who comes to a maker meetup, something like that. It's a group of positive, supportive people that you'd love to be involved with. Hey, we're involved with this project here on Build Stuff. I'm Kevin Barnett, and Maker in Charge. We are on to step 2, and we have the router table out. Also have a couple of sanders out. I wanted to backtrack just a touch and say when you're sanding your edges, if you don't have a router, you can sand your edges here with the the Sand Cat. You can go with a straight belt sander. You can go with an orbital sander. Use whatever tools you have at your disposal. Maybe it's a file to go ahead and modify your dominoes the way you want. It doesn't have to be the way I want. That's the beauty of it. So lots of options with whatever tooling you have available or you want to purchase to have available to you for this project and future projects. For me, put on the safety glasses. We're going to use a little roundover bit. Now, I wouldn't put my hands as close as I'm going to put them to here with these dominoes with any other bit but this. I wouldn't do it with a 22 degree or 45 degree, something that's really putting a bite into the wood. This is already dangerous enough for me. I also have a smaller set here. This was made from 1x2, so it's really only 1.5 inches wide. These are a little bit smaller set. You might have some smaller hands in the house that you want to have play. Let's go ahead and rattle a couple. So again, keeping control of the piece. I try and keep my hands away. If this thing's going to jump, my hand's not going in there. It's just going to jump and go away. A nice looking top. See that? Make sure you have good grip of it. And this is just that poplar again. This isn't anything expensive. Now, if you're going to do these guys, if you're going to router these smaller ones, I would certainly make sure you get yourself a push block and use that. It's not quite as efficient, but it sure is safer. I know there's always an argument about safety. people are constantly arguing about safety online. And listen, I don't want to put my hands anywhere near anything spinning that's going to take my hand off. I like having my hands. I have a saw stomp on the other side of the camera there. It'll be featured in another one. I have that because not only am I out here, but my sons are out here. And I am very respectful of anything that can cut you, including this router. So we're going to do 28 total pieces for the set. We're doing a set of 6. I have a few that are already ready to go, but let's take a look at what we have now. So here's your setup. These guys are routered, they're sanded, most of them. Go ahead and mark your middle. I have a delve square, a really nice little guy. You can do it with a ruler, you don't need anything fancy. Go ahead and mark your 1 inch. So let's do one we haven't done here. You go ahead and take it out, mark your 1 inch. So you get your midpoint, and this is just a guide right now. And then come back and put just a line across it so that you have a line across right there on your domino. You know your center point for your domino, so you can go ahead and start burning your numbers. So let's do that. Get the router out of the way. You will spend a fair amount of time routering with 28 of them, though. You will spend a fair amount of time covered in some sawdust, and that's okay, because that's a lot of fun. As others say, sawdust, good, clean fun. So let's take a look at our soldering iron. Now, this is just a basic soldering iron. I had a new one around here. We'll get it out later. Oh, there we go. $20. It's a Weller. Just 25 watts. I think this one might even be a 20 watt. This one's even older. So you can get yourself a $20 soldering iron. Go ahead and modify the tip. Grind it down with a file. Grind it down with some sandpaper. It's pretty soft. And get yourself a circle. And now you take your line that you made, and this one needs to be a 5/4. So you're going to want to come in here and find the corner more or less. Try not to burn your hand like I just did. So come on in and give it a second there. This wood, this poplar, burns pretty quick, so it doesn't take much. And a soldering iron is a pretty safe tool for a lot of ages. Yeah, you can burn yourself, but you're not really going to hurt yourself. You're just going to get a little bit of a burn. So my recommendation, having done a fair amount of these, to get it looking decent is to do the corners first. Whatever it is that you're doing, do the corners first. And this one's going to be a 5. So we'll find the middle. And this will be a 5/4. So there's our 5. And now we're starting the 4 on the other side. You can see our line down the middle. We'll get to that in a little bit. We'll just burn this one up for you. So again, hit the corners, and this will help you, and practice is invaluable. Like anything, it's all about practice. You just need to work on your positioning. You'll get better and better at it, and if you have an 8-year-old doing it, it will look like an 8-year-old did it, and that'll be awesome, because that's great. The 8-year-old's making some stuff. So here we go, 5/4. There's that domino. That is part of the set that I'm almost done with here. I've been working on these. So remember, you're going to start with 0, 0, go on up 0, 1, and so on as you go. Don't make doubles. You might want to make a couple extras in case you mess them up. But you have 28 of these to cover. And we'll put one up there, for maybe you can see it there. See, the boys can zoom in on it. So you can do 28 of those. I think the hardest ones were the 6s, because you have to do the corners, then you have to try and align directly between those lines. I want to also try and burn one of these little guys while we're here. I haven't tried the little set yet. So these guys are only 1.5 inches long. So let's go ahead and use our delve square like we were talking about. Go 3/4 and then come across, put ourselves a line, and we will make that line go away later. So here you might want a little smaller soldering iron, but let's try it out. What if this was a 1/4? And this is burning in a hurry too. But this is pre-dimensioned. I didn't even have to cut this. I didn't have to find anybody to cut it. I didn't have to rip it through a table saw. That's kind of fun. A little squat. It's like your Danny DeVito of Dominoes right there. There we go. So that's an option for sure in terms of burning. Now, if you're going to burn, get some ventilation. We just burned a couple of them here, but make sure you're in a ventilated room. Don't sit in your basement and essentially breathe a forest fire. That's a bad idea. So safety first. I have a hot soldering iron here, but what you're going to want to do is switch you're going to want to go to a different tip. This is a straight tip that also comes with the kit. You actually have a couple different tips in the kit, and that's how I'm going to do my center lines. So I would come back and I would go right across the center line here and burn a center line in to give it some definition between each of the numbers. But again, that's up to you. You could do that with a Dremel. You could run a Dremel along that line if you want to just put a little crease in it. That would also be cool. You can also on the back put something on there if you want. So 28 of those or more, depending upon what you're doing. You're going to have them dimensioned. You're going to have them sanded. Now you're going to have them routed, carved. You have a top, and you're going to put your numbers on them. You're looking good on today's fast project. Let's go to World of Makers. This is where we go out to places where people are making stuff. Some are complete job shops. You're going to have one of those in here. Some are part-time. Some are full-time engineers. Whoever it may be, wherever in the world they are, let's meet 3 people in the maker community.
Hey there, I'm Stu with Yellow Mug. Thank you for coming by the shop and saving me from doing this little project right now. But I have a custom studio here in Chicago. I build custom furniture and prototyping work. So it's a different thing every day. Keeps us busy. What am I building today is this this jig, like I said, for the Shaper Origin handheld CNC. Had to put my logo in it, but it's going to be used on some trestle tables that I have coming up. They are built with reclaimed lumber straight here from Chicago, and they are going to be using some mortise and tenons, which is what I need this for. So it's a big, long project. You will see more of that later for sure, but I'm going to go ahead and get back to this. And until then, do me a favor, keep making. See you soon.
Hey guys, Cody from Organic Woodworks in Searcy, Arkansas. So what we've kind of been doing in this time is playing around with different styles and designs while all the businesses are shut down. We're just throwing out some stuff that we had in our head. For example, what you see here is a new series of furniture that we're working on called the Tin Roof series. It is actually a metal top and a base. Obviously what we have on it right now is just your standard trestle, nothing special, but what we're really trying to perfect is the metal tops. We get these worked out and get these perfected, and then we can throw in trestles, pedestals, or tulips, or whatever base design and paint and scheme and all those things. And so that's kind of what we're doing in this time, just trying to make the best of it, work out some creative stuff that we had brewing anyways, and just taking the opportunity while businesses kind of slowed down to work this stuff out. But again, I hope everybody out there is being safe, you're staying healthy, and as always, God bless, guys.
Hey, I'm Emeil, the practical engineer, and I work from this 2x3 meter workshop in the Netherlands, where I build all sorts of cool things. I build furniture, I build cool machines, I build funny machines, and things to improve your workshop and anything else that I like. So right now I'm working on this cool Tesla Cybertruck scale model. Let me show you. Right over here. So I had this 1 to 10 scale car that I bought for another project that was not gonna work. So I scrapped the project but kept the car. Then I asked on Instagram what should I do with it, and someone suggested make a Cybertruck. Well, that's a cool project, so I did it. I started with a flat sheet of aluminum that I laser cut. I bent it all in the right shape, and then I soldered the back corners and I glued the front corners to get this nice Cybertruck shape. And look at it. It's still very far from finished, but it already looks so good. I'm gonna print the things for here. The front bumper, the rear bumper. We're gonna put some windows in here, which are stronger than Tesla's windows, I hope. And then I need to find a way to mount it, because I don't want to have the standard RC mounts. But this is like my passion project right now. The reason I love making these projects is that with every project you learn a ton of new stuff. I try to pick my project so that there's new techniques in it and skills that I've never used. But even if you think there's no new stuff in it, there's always something that comes and bites you and you learn from it. So that's what I love, and that's why I love making. See you later.
Fantastic stuff there from all three of those guys. Stu up in Chicago has been doing some PPE, personal protective equipment, for a variety of people all around the Chicago area. So we spent a lot of time with his 3D printers and his laser cutter, as well as his Tormach machine to create some PPE for folks who need it right now. Going on to Cody down in Arkansas. He's also working on a fun project for Ty Pennington of television fame, working on a chess set for him. So he's doing some of that carving. He's getting into the Simon Woodworks side of things. I know that's a passion project of his. You can follow that on Instagram. And Emeil Norlander, you may have come across him because he did the automatic Oreo dispensing machine. And he also did one to go with it. That was the automatic milk dispensing machine. Really creative guy. He makes a lot of really cool stuff up there. Thanks to all three of them for contributing to today's show. Okay, Fast Project Section 3. Here we go. We are done. Yeah, just like that, right? Just like that, you've gone ahead and made 28 of these things. And I spent a long time working on these guys. These are actually made out of maple, 1-inch thick maple. So remember, this is totally your own design. I think these are a little bit lightweight. They're playable. They're fine. But these are totally your own design. You can make them however you want. I really enjoy the fact that these are 1 inch thick. I really like the fact that these maple ones are 1 inch thick. They have a good feel in the hand. You can really slam them down. If you're a fan of Friday, you can really win the game. Domino! And I'll skip the rest, but you know what it is. I enjoy that about them, and they also stand even easier, so they're a nice block. You could also take and make a box. This project originally came from some reclaimed walnut that a friend of mine had, Madison McKibben, reclaimed walnut that he had found. So we cleaned it up from complete raw wood. It's really nice too. It's all spalted and gnarled and has holes in it. And we went ahead and made a set of dominoes for him. And that turned out to be a really fun thing for he and his girlfriend who had found that together. I think that was her birthday present, as I recall. And they were 1 inch thick. They were a really hardy set of dominoes. You can put them in a nice box, make a nice box for them. So a lot of different variety. You can go anything from down here at inexpensive wood all the way up to walnut. Really enjoyed that. Now, walnut, the one interesting thing about it was we went to oil them. We went to give them a finish, just a hard oil from the Maker podcast. Let me think of the name of that stuff. Simple oil. Simple finish, pardon me. Sorry to those guys, one of my favorite finishes. Simple finish. We went to put it on there, and the black hole or black burn marks had shown up beautifully on the maple, but as soon as we put oil on it, you lost the contrast entirely. You couldn't see the marks anymore. I think on this maple, when we put a little oil on this, the black marks are going to really come alive. I think that's going to be a little better. So you can leave it oiled, unoiled. You could do a poly on it, whatever you want to do. Let's talk about how easy this was to do. This project is easily repeatable, is very inexpensive. Weller, this is 20 bucks. The wood was 10 bucks. So I think I had that later, guys, but let's roll that. So let's break down the cost for you. Weller, 10 bucks or 20 bucks. Wood, $7 to $25. $25 is the max. If you're going to go out and buy some really nice walnut and cut that up for a set, that's about as far as you're going to go. Might cost you a few more bucks if you need to have stuff dimensioned by someone else, but even then, super easy. Find somebody with a table saw, cut it into the right dimensions for you, and a cross-cut sled, bam, done. So I really like the fact that it's available and easy. Now, buy versus DIY, that's always the question. Okay, I can go out and buy a set of dominoes. Yes, they're well done. They're a commodity. I can go to Walmart, Target, wherever. I can buy specialty dominoes. They're made out of heavy material. They're set to go. True, you can do that. However, this is something you made. And not only is it something you made, but I love projects where you make something and then you can use it. You get to have that value again and again, and the kids can use it. If the kids made their own set, then they can go ahead and use it over and over again. I enjoy that. Anything I have in my house that I made, I'm very prideful about, and I think this would be fun because you can share it with other people. It doesn't just sit there. So it's an active item, and you can do almost anything with it. I could throw them in the CNC that I have here. I have a Shapeoko. We could make a set that has complete customization on the back, on the side, wherever. But this is done virtually by hand. I hand sanded all of these, burned them all by hand. Easy, accessible, take it as far as you'd like with the tools you have at home. So that'll do it for our fast project. Hope you get a chance to make some dominoes. If you do, go ahead and send it to us on Instagram. Find us there or on Facebook, or of course you can do it in the comments below. No problem. We'd love to interact with you all across the world. Okay. Other stuff I've been doing, because I build stuff as well. I'll show you a little something I've been doing with my aforementioned Shapeoko. And we can talk about learning with this one, boys and girls. So this is the 512 apparel sign. This is a company up in Seattle, Tacoma area, Seattle or Washington area, and this is their retail shop sign. And yes, it's cut in half, and yes, that's on purpose because I don't have a 4x8 machine. I only have a Shapeoko XXL. So I had to cut it in half and put it together, but you might notice on here that it doesn't exactly match. So guess what will be getting redone? Yeah, the 512 sign. Because this grain and this grain aren't close enough. Instead of taking one board and stacking it this way and then cutting it, and taking another board and stacking it this way and then cutting it, I need to stack them across in full form, cut them in half, throw them in the machine, bring them back together. That's how you do it. But we'll call this a learning experience. All right? But I love it because I learned a lot more about how to use Fusion and a lot more about how to use my machine and splitting stuff in half. I've got a bunch of projects in the future. I have to build a giant pot, 4 feet long, steel and walnut, and that's going to go, maybe steel and oak. That's going to go on a table here in the South Bay area of Los Angeles. Looking forward to welding that up. As well as, I'm kind of spitballing a project here with a childhood toy. It's going to be fun. I think you're going to like it. It's going to involve a childhood favorite of mine growing up in the 80s and 90s, and then it's also going to be a functional piece of furniture. So keep your eye out for that one. I also want a little more time to mess around. I want to have a good time. I want to mess around with in the shop. I think that's important. Jimmy DeResta talks a lot about having time to play in the shop and explore ideas. Inevitably, it leads to further ideas and something else you can make for somebody else, for a project, for a video, if that's what you do. Playing in the shop is definitely important. If you have some ideas out there in the universe and you want us to execute them here on Kevin Barnett's Build Stuff, go ahead and send them to us. We want to know. Hit us up on Instagram. Send us a direct message. We want to do some fun stuff here on the show. We're going to have some fun stuff for you. We're going to have some tool tests. We're going to have some stuff that you can identify with. We're going to get out of the shop itself as we can here under quarantine, depending upon how it goes. All right. I mentioned earlier that I love car design. I do love car design. That's why I put in there the Classic Livery Instagram. I would encourage you out there to draw from other areas to put them into whatever it is you're making. Whatever it is you're making, bring in the grill of a car, bring in the lines of a car, bring in the livery of a car, bring in a design from a building that you saw. Take pictures. My kids hate I take pictures of everything. And I don't even know that I'll ever categorize them all, but cool ideas or edges or things I see, especially when I was on a trip to Europe last year and traveling through Denmark and so on, there was a right place for pictures for me. Take pictures of cool stuff so it's back there in your brain percolating on a project. Because I'll spend time percolating on a project before I actually go and make it lots of times. And people say, well, are you going to get to my project? I'm thinking about it. Don't worry. I'm thinking about it. I want to get back to things I learned this week. Even if you run a test on something, there's no guarantee it's going to work the second time. See the 512 sign. I'm slower than I want to be, and I need to accept that. But I refuse. But I'm going to try and not let it frustrate me as much as it has this past week in terms of completing projects, getting ideas from inside my head into a physical thing. And bidding work is challenging. I've been learning that one over and over and over again. In fact, there's whole guides to it out there on the internet, and we'll talk to some of the guys who were involved with that, I'm sure, on this show. What to watch before we go. Coming up this week, we'll have a show for you hopefully in a couple weeks, but what to watch this week, make sure you watch The Last Dance. It's about the Chicago Bulls in the 97-98 season. Even if you're not a basketball fan, the interpersonal relationships are fascinating. I'm a Chicago guy, huge Bulls fan back then. Check that out. Also follow Ann of All Trades on Instagram if you haven't. Ann's doing some terrific work in this community, and it is baby season at her new farm in Tennessee. If you like little goats flying around, calves flying around, doing fun stuff, go ahead and check that out. Also, I wanted to give some thanks before we go. I wanted to give thanks to Matt Perez and the Lamb brothers, Josh and Dave, who are behind this show along with me to get Kevin Barnett's Build Stuff into reality. So thank you to those gentlemen. Also, thanks to Winston Moy for his help this week and for bringing me into this community originally. He's the very first guy I ever watched on YouTube, and the reason that I bought the Shapeoko that's over here, and the reason I got involved with the maker community and discovered so many fantastic people doing great work across the United States as well as the planet. Winston was my gateway drug, my gateway to making and getting excited about making and going even further in the world of makers. Kind of like Zach Brown Band. If you like Zach Brown Band, all of a sudden you're a fan of country music. It's just how it happens. If you like Winston Moy, you're a fan of makers across the planet. It's just how it goes. I also want to thank Chad of Mancrafting for being here, Stu of Yellow Mug, Cody of Organic Woodwork, Emeil of The Practical Engineer, and you, the viewer, if you want to follow me, I'm at Big Barn Design on Instagram. We'll also have an Instagram feed for this particular show. You can go ahead and hit us up there. We're going to have more episodes for you, more things to do here in the shop, also known as what used to be the garage. Keep an eye out. Thanks for joining us here on Kevin Barnett's Build Stuff.